funny old day. I realised I hadn't quite finished taking you through my library of craft books. I've decided to leave the sewing ones to another day because that's going to be my kick up the bum that I need to get back into sewing. Anita, hello! You mentioned or questioned one of my other videos that I haven't mentioned any sewing. Have I stopped doing it? And yes, I have stopped doing it. Yes, I need to get back to it. So I'll save the sewing for another day. So what have I got for you today? There's one book I probably should have talked to you about on the very first book vlog thing that I did when I talked to you about the book I'm still currently reading, sort of about the craft itself, about textiles, and that is A History of Hand Knitting by Richard Rutt, who was the Bishop of Leicester, so he's rather affectionately known as the Knitting Bishop. This certainly used to be the standard work on the history of knitting. I think since it has been published, obviously academia has moved on, and if you read this, I wouldn't want to say everything in here is correct, but it's certainly well worth a read. I'm not even sure that it's still in print. I certainly got mine secondhand. I think I got it secondhand off eBay, and I paid about £30 for it, so it wasn't cheap even at the time. But it's a smashing volume full of really interesting things. So if I just read you from the inside dust jacket. Knitting is widely practiced by non-professionals and tends to be a people's craft. Therein lies much of its interest and the fascination of knitting history. Hand knitting is the most domestic of crafts, and knitted garments have always been designed for practical purposes, tending to be worn until they disintegrated. Thus, hand knitting has received relatively little attention from textile historians. Richard Rutt has now written the first full history of hand knitting in a book which makes absorbing reading for knitters and non-knitters alike. It is surprisingly difficult to define knitting, and so the author offers a definition of the process in relation to other yarn crafts such as crochet. Literary evidence is drawn upon, and the social aspects of knitting are a main concern. Well-known legends about knitting history are re-evaluated, and the development of techniques and tools is covered, together with the history of the craft from before 1500 to the present day. Some local traditions of the British Isles are investigated, including the knitting of Shetland, Arran, Wales, the Channel Islands and the Yorkshire Dales. Knitting traditions east of the Adriatic and in the Americas have separate chapters, and the book includes an historical glossary and a transcription of the earliest knitting pattern in English. The book is illustrated with a remarkable range of both colour and black and white photographs, together with clear technical diagrams and a large number of designs specially charted from historical items. So it's a lovely book, if possibly somewhat out of date, but really, really well worth a read. When was it actually published? 1987. First published in 1987, reprinted in 1987 and 1989. Oh, there you are. I've just spotted a sticker on the inside. Mine was, yes, I did buy it secondhand, and it was officially withdrawn from the Flintshire Library Service. Yeah, so I really enjoyed reading this. Full of interesting information, does get quite technical. Well worth a read if you can pick up a copy, but they are a bit hard to find. Two more slightly technical books. Alice Starmore's A Book of Fair Isle Knitting. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Really popular work. Combination of the history and a little bit of how to design your own and several patterns. It's marvellously 1980s, and I particularly love the photograph of this chap fishing in a vest. Now look at the wind whiffling through his 1980s moustache, absolutely marvellous. But it has an interesting and useful sort of stitch dictionary of patterns, a history of it, hand-drawn illustrations for techniques as well. Yeah, and like stitch dictionaries of period designs and things like that. As far as I know, this one is still in print and easy to get hold of. And if you're interested in fair isle knitting, again, this is one of the classic sort of books. One of the other classic books is this doorstop. And this is The Principles of Knitting by June Hemmans Hyatt. It really is an absolute monster of a book. And this is sort of the seminal, all-inclusive book on knitting techniques. And you know, I've hardly read any of it. It's not the sort of thing that one would pick up and read from cover to cover. You would dip into it depending on what you were working on at the time that you needed help with. And ultimately, I'm a bit more of a visual learner. So I'm more likely to look on YouTube than I am to dive into a book for technique specific stuff. But it really is a fascinating book and very, very useful if that's how you learn best. It does have a section on pattern design, decorative techniques, special fabrics. It covers everything from twined knitting, increases and decrease, casting on, casting off, different ways of shaping a fabric. And it really is, oof, yeah. Again, not cheap, I don't think. Yeah, 45 American dollars. I don't know what that would be in British, less than that, but it's, again, it's a classic knitter's reference guide, basically, and a very good one at that. I've got a couple of books that are more to do with wool itself, if that makes sense. I've got this British Sheep Breeds book that Jenny bought me as a birthday present, I think. And this is a rather nice book. It's quite a slim volume, and it just gives you a nice overview into different sheep breeds. It explains the main differences between the various breeds and the qualities of their appearance, temperament, meat and wool, and also outlines the history of sheep farming and the way that industry works. It's got lovely photographs in, covers all the main breeds, and is, yeah, it's just a really nice introduction if you're looking to learn more about the fibres. Yeah, so that's a nice slim introduction. I've got the Field Guide to Fleece, and this is sort of the out and about companion volume to the really big tome equivalent. Jenny's got the big one and I've got the little one. And this is, think of this as a reference guide. So if you were going to, perhaps if you were more of a spinner, or if you were looking to knit with a yarn and you haven't heard of the breed before, this is the sort of thing that you can put in your rucksack and take with you to a yarn show and just quickly refer to. So for example, the Llanwenog, it gives you a bit about the breed and a picture. And then on this side, it gives you an indication of staple length. And in the little facts box at the top, it gives you origin, fleece weights, staple length, fibre diameters, which is the micron count, and the natural colours it occurs in. And then a little space for you to write some notes in as well. Yeah, so if you've got this on your bookshelf and you're ordering something online and you're not sure you know about it, this is a really handy guide. Another two seminal but slightly more modern works are Clara Park's two books, the Book of Yarn and the Book of Wool. These do contain some patterns in them as well, but it's just, well, I mean, the Knitter's Book of Wool, the ultimate guide to understanding, using and loving this most fabulous fibre. And it's just, it discusses some of the technical side of wool, how it's turned into yarn and the differences therein, like woolen and worsted, a bit about breeds again, and some patterns as well. So it really is a fascinating book, really nicely written. Again, lots of pictures of staple length and the breeds themselves. And then the Knitter's Book of Yarn, the ultimate guide to choosing, using and enjoying yarn. So this is about the finished product more than the starting product. And it includes everything, Angora, and the camelids, goats, sheep's fleece, that kind of thing as well. And if I just find the introduction. So yes, it discusses protein fibres, cellulose fibres, cellulosic fibres and synthetic fibres, making yarn, the effects of plying and pulling it all together. And some really nice patterns in the back as well. So again, these, where's the other one? These two, well worth a read, absolutely. These can all get quite expensive. I've sort of picked these up, some of them second hand, some of them gifts over the years. But I know that quite a few local guilds have lending libraries and you can pick them up second hand as well, certainly the more modern ones. I have got one book on hand dyeing yarn and fleece by Gail Callahan. Jenny ended up being bought 2 of these several years ago, so she very kindly passed one on to me. It's another spiral bound one, which I do like. And it's just a little bit about the practical side of dyeing. So if you were looking at getting into dyeing, either commercially or just for your own enjoyment, this is a really nice book. Everything's in there. So it explains different techniques, the effects the different yarn bases will have, colour variation, and then how the patterns that you select can make the best of the yarn that you produce. And again, it's a really lovely book, lots of colour photos. And that was Story Press as well. And then I've got 2 books on spinning, which I've only bought fairly recently. One was only my birthday back in March. And I haven't dived all the way through them, but they really are fascinating books. So the first one is Yarnitecture, A Knitter's Guide to Spinning, Building Exactly the Yarn You Want by Gillian Moreno. So if you are spinning with a desired outcome in mind for a knitted garment, this is your book. Again, it has some patterns in here, some of which are really lovely. But she deals with different fibre types and how to spin, different spinning techniques, and what the finished garment qualities you are after will affect the spinning decisions that you make. She also covers dealing with colour in different ways, and there's an awful lot of swatches to go with everything she talks about, and I really like that she lines them all up side by side for you so you can actually compare the different outcomes that different spinning techniques and different fibre types will have on your finished object. And then the other one is very much a reference book for a spinner. It's called The Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs by Sarah Anderson. And this is a massive how-to on pretty much every type of yarn you would ever want to spin. Again, beautifully illustrated. Where's the contents page? Yes, so she covers spinning basics, singles for plying, standalone singles, spiral yarns, opposing plies, bouclés, cable, crepe, core and novelty yarns. And again, really nice images to demonstrate exactly what she means. And what's really lovely is at the back of the book there's this little envelope. I haven't even opened mine yet. And what you get is a whole load, and this page is perforated so you can split these into 4, a whole load of how-tos in a reference card, so you could split all of these up and put one in your basket of fibre, so you find the yarn outcome you're looking for on here, and you've always got a reference guide to hand so you're not leafing through this massive book. Yeah, really good. It's really quite technical, and it would be a fabulous exercise to work your way through absolutely everything in here. That would do an awful lot to expand your knitting, spinning skills. That's all of my fibre craft related library books in my stash. I hope you found that interesting. I think pretty much all of them are still very easily available with the exception of the Richard Rutt History of Hand Knitting, so you might need to scour secondhand sites for that one. Hope you found it interesting, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!